Hi everyone, welcome to the John Kelly Award info session. We've got 10 participants. Perfect, that's great. So you're all very welcome. We have a captioner here today, so if you do need that, just click on the CC and Cara will provide you with captions. And we are recording the session, so that will be shared with you afterwards, and we'll share it with those who weren't able to join us. And we'll just wait another minute or two on a couple of more attendees to join us, and then we'll get started. Hi everyone, you're all very welcome. I'm Daniel. I work in UCD and I am the project officer working on the John Kelly Awards this year. So I think what we'll do is we'll get started. As I say, we are recording the session, and if you do need captions, we have Cara here who is going to provide them if you want to click on the CC. I'll share my slides now and then we'll get started. Now, can everybody see those slides there? I'll just take that as a yes. Perfect. Okay. So what we will do today is the format is going to be, we'll just go through the general information and the timelines for the awards. Then we'll look at the individual applications and the rubrics, and then look at the UGL and collaboration applications and the rubrics. So hopefully you all know that there are two categories of the John Kelly Awards. There's the individual awards, and we have a subcategory for HEIs, and we have a subcategory for further education and training. So there will be three awards given in October, and then we have the UGL and collaboration application, which will be for both FET and HE. And I will just say, if there are any questions, I'll give a break in the middle and then we'll do some at the end as well. Just to give you a kind of a flavor of what the applications entail and what the rubrics entail and the whole process. I won't go into all of the individual criteria individually because that will just take up too much time. But if you did have specific questions on particular criteria, you can ask me that and we can share the application form on the screen. So the timeline, the applications close on the 5th of June. So we are currently accepting applications, and the review process will be from the 6th of June until the 22nd of July, with a shortlisted applications informed in August. So, and those applicants will proceed to the final in mid-October. And at the final, it will be, finalists will be expected to do a short presentation of about 5 to 10 minutes, which will be in front of a live judging panel. And then we will have a special publication showcasing the award applicants and winners later on then in 2022. So this, what we wanted to do as well as celebrate the award winners, and we also wanted to, add to the field of UGL research. So that's what this publication will support, and it will have extracted content and anonymized examples for thematic analysis. And then the sort of just more general information, this applies to both categories of the award. Outlining the context of your work is absolutely vital to the application. So it provides a benchmark for the reviewers to assess your application. It isn't graded, it won't be scored, but that is a crucial part. And if that isn't filled in appropriate, well, then it's going to make the rest of the review process quite difficult. As applications will be scored based on the rubrics, of course, and we are accepting video applications. So these will be clearly structured based on the same questions asked in the written application, and they will be between 15 and 20 minutes in length. If you are submitting a video application, you would still need to complete the GDPR statement in the application form. And I suppose, obviously, but needs to be said that the video applications will be reviewed using the rubrics based on that structure. And we're not going to be going in for any high production values included in it. So the applications will be initially screened by AHEAD and UCD, and then they will be assessed by 2 international reviewers. So we've got a really great panel of UGL experts, international experts, who will be looking at the applications, and the scores will be aggregated, and the top 3 applications from each award category with the highest scores will proceed to the final. And we will provide feedback on all applications. So we recognize that this is an application that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort from everybody, and it also should be a learning opportunity for everybody who applies. Sorry now. The individual awards for higher education and further education and training. You will be asked to describe the context of your learning environment. You will need to outline your implementation of UGL. You will outline the impact on your students, and you will also look at the contribution to wider UGL recognition and outline future plans, and then also complete the GDPR agreement. So just to say that the individual awards are not limited to academic and teaching staff. So anybody who has done the digital badge can apply. It's a max of 2,500 words. So as I say, you must have completed the digital badge, and it is going above and beyond your redesign activity. So that, you can't just resubmit that redesign activity and expect to be proceeding to the final in this award. And it's really looking at that contribution to the wider UGL leadership and recognition that's moving beyond kind of just your immediate implementation of UGL and those exercises in the classroom. So, for example, within that category or within that criteria, You would be looking at how you've influenced colleagues to adopt UGL practices. Have you encouraged them to complete the digital badge? Have you shared your good practice with colleagues or with external stakeholders? And in what other ways have you raised awareness within the organisation, or do you raise it through committees, through working groups, and so communities of practice? You know, how do you share those resources? So they would be some of the prompts that we would have for number 4 there, in contribution to the wider UGL recognition. In terms of the, you know, for example, the implementation of UGL, we would be, you know, looking at the process there in terms of what did you hope to achieve, and what were the key steps you took towards implementing this. How did you go about planning this process? How did you set objectives? And, you know, how did you monitor this progress as well? And again, we would be using that same process that you would have done in the digital badge, in terms of opportunities for reflection, capturing good practice, and then thinking about ways you would improve. As part of the implementation as well, you'd be looking at the engaging with other stakeholders and bringing them into the process. So as I say, evidence of self-evaluation, good practice, and areas for improvement. So that is just one of the tables just within the rubrics for the individual awards. So it will give you an idea of how the reviewers will be scoring the application, and that's for the number 4 there, the contribution to wider UGL recognition. So we've split it kind of into those early stages, progressing and leading. So in early stages, the applicant is showing evidence of engaging with colleagues, but is yet to convert them to UGL practitioners, with some sharing of resources. Applicants' efforts to raise awareness and communicate with wider organisations still needs to make headway. And then the applicant has made efforts to encourage colleagues to explore UGL within their own practice. Sorry, this is under progressing. Resources and good practice shared by the applicant ad hoc, some increased awareness, and so on. And the applicant has facilitated the digital badge at least once. So, and then in the leading side of things, the applicant has encouraged colleagues to undertake the digital badge, shares resources and good practice regularly. Awareness of UGL within the organisation has increased, and this is beginning to be recognised in strategies, policies, community practices is being formed. So as you can see there, it's very much building up on people's implementation there. And we hope that that's pretty clear and straightforward in terms of how the reviewers are going about scoring the whole process. Before I move on to the UGL Collaboration Award, was there any specific questions people had for the individual awards? Anything about either the review process, the application, or the rubrics? Okay, silence is golden. And I do have the rubrics and everything here in front of me. So if people wanted to ask something specific, we can pull that up and I can share my screen and we can go through that. So the UGL Collaboration Award is similar to the individual awards, but it is, I suppose, requiring that little bit more meat as well in terms of the application. It is a larger application that is 3,250 words, there it is basically looking at how UGL is being implemented in a collaborative effort by a group of colleagues within a specific context. So it's moving beyond that individual moving beyond the individual and how it is being embedded in kind of that institutional or organizational context. And this group can be a center within ETB or an entire ETB or a college or school within a HEI, or on behalf of the institution organization as a whole. And we do recognize that these are, in terms of their size and their context, they are different. We haven't split this category down as of yet, because we're kind of in the early stages of formalizing our thinking on it. But I guess going forward, we would consider you know, having subcategories of this award depending on the size of organization or institution or the specific context. This in many ways is a learning exercise for us to see what efforts are being made out there nationally and by particular organizations. And just to say that only one application can be made per entity, and what we mean by that is by one centre within ETB or an entire ETB, or you know, one college or school within a HEI. So you could have two different centres within an educational training board applying, but that's fine, even though they might be from the same board. And the same goes with, there could be two colleges or schools within the same institution applying. And crucially to this application, endorsement from senior management is required, and whether that be your centre manager or director or your head of school or the president of the institution as a whole. And it is made on behalf of a lead applicant who will be named in, you will name in your application, but as this collaborative award, we would encourage the lead applicant to work with as many colleagues as possible. And an important thing here is to say, just while you may want to include links and refer to specific documents as evidence, we won't be expecting reviewers to assess, they won't be looking at all of these links and specific documents. They will assess applications based on the content provided within the application. So, for example, you might link your strategy document for the centre. We would ask you to very clearly, you know, reference where exactly you are referring to and where is UGL referenced within this document. And you can include as an attachment as part of the screening process. We will look through those, but the reviewers will not be reviewing the entire document as a whole, in the interest of time, but also in fairness as well, as some applications might include so much evidence and skew the application. So the criteria and the parts of the application, again, you're outlining the context of your organization, size, the number of colleagues, the number of learners, the diversity of those learners. And then you are going into the systematic implementation within this context of UGL. And you notice that the points per category here is higher. So the individual awards are scored out of 50, and the collaborative award is scored out of 100. And the third criteria, is outlining how stakeholders are being involved in this process. And we've allocated 50 points to this part of the application because we feel that it is the part that in many ways will take the most work, getting buy-in, getting involvement, getting buy-in from leadership, colleagues right across organizations, working within different contexts within those organizations, and so on. And then we will be looking at evidence of impact on the students or learners. And in particular, we would be looking at the beginnings of things like learner partnership and how learners are being very much involved as collaborators within the UGL implementation. So it's not just the impact on the learner's performance or their experience and so on. And then we're looking at outlining future plans for deeper UGL implementation. And then we would ask for a one-page letter of endorsement from the senior leader, and then, of course, the all-important GDPR agreement. And then just to give you a flavor of the rubrics, this is the impact on learners. So you'll see that's broken down into 2 parts of 10 points each. It's the early stages impact of UGL implementation on learners has been measured in some classes modules. For example, individual practitioners are measuring the impact of their UGL implementation. Then in progressing stage, UGL implementation is being measured systematically for some groups of learners. For example, UGL specific questions are being asked in the program or module feedback evaluation. And then in the leading category, we have impact of UGL implementation is being captured in various formats. Performance, it's looking at things like retention, progression, results, learning, experience, feedback, qualitative and quantitative. And I should say as well, you know, if we're looking at the prompts for this particular criteria, we're looking at some of the questions you can think about would be, how is this being measured? Are there specific questions being asked in the class or in module feedback? Is this being done systematically? Is there qualitative and quantitative feedback being captured? How are students engaged as partners in UGL implementation? How aware are they of this process? And have they been surveyed? Have focus groups been carried out, for example? Are there plans to have them involved in the planning? Would they perhaps sit on a steering or an advising or a working group? Again, crucially, we're looking for applicants to evidence self-evaluation, good practice, and then thinking about areas of improvement. So that is the awards and the applications in a nutshell. I'm hoping you guys have a couple of different questions. I'll just open the chat here now.
Daniel, we have a few questions in the Q&A box. So the first one we have is, can what we put in our applications remain private if we are shortlisted, or will the final disclose those? For example, if we're disclosing a disability, if that's relevant?
So that would be a tricky one, because we would, at the final, we would expect if the applicant was shortlisted, that they would present in front of the live judging panel. So while I could say that for the review process, we could anonymize the application, but I think at the award or at the final, we wouldn't be able to facilitate that.
Sure, perfect. And then we also have, if one does not have the data, is there any point in putting in an application? So I think that's referring to what you had just said about the collaborative award.
Sure, and Emer, is that specifically in relation to the student feedback and evidence and the student data? Yeah, sure. I think this section in a way is I guess a bit of a wish list for us, because we know that it is you know, that while there are many practitioners of UGL in the country, we're yet to kind of get to that stage where there is getting that concrete evidence, the concrete data that proves that UGL implementation is making a big impact on learners' progression or retention and so on. So I would say to you, this is a category we don't expect applicants to score very highly on. So I would say absolutely, if you feel you can submit a strong application in the other criteria, absolutely, please do submit it, because I think that's probably going to be the weakest category for most, and hopefully in later iterations of the award, that will become easier as we begin to see that feedback process and the understanding of how UDL impacts on students and learners will become more apparent. I hope that answers your question. Great. Is there any any other questions there? Ursula, you're asking about others some short haven't done anything. If you'd like, Ursula, I can show the rubric here, or yeah, I can bring that up, and I'll stop sharing this.
While you're pulling that up, Daniel, there's just another question in here. Do we need ethical approval or to go through some ethical process to submit that data?
So what I would say to that is follow whichever procedures you have within your own institution. If, you know, and for example, we would expect that data to be anonymized and to follow the GDPR guidelines within your institution. And if it does need ethical approval, we would ask you to complete that before submitting it. Okay, and Ursula, sorry, you wanted to look at the contribution to wider UDL recognition. So that's it there. The applicant, so that early stage is the applicant is showing evidence of engaging with colleagues, but this is yet to kind of convert them into UDL practitioners, and there's some sharing of resources, and the applicant's efforts to raise awareness, communicate with the wider organisation still to make headway. And then at the progressing level, we have the applicant has made efforts to encourage colleagues to explore UDL within their own practice, and resources and good practice shared by the applicant is done ad hoc, and there's some increased awareness of and interest of UDL within the organisation as a result of the applicant's efforts, but this is anecdotal. The applicant could have facilitated the digital badge at least once. And the applicant has encouraged colleagues to undertake the digital badge in the leading category. The applicant has shared resources and good practice regularly, and the awareness of UDL within the organisation has increased, with this being raised at meetings, regular comms, etc. And this could begin to be recognised in policies or strategies, and a community of practice being formed. So, and I would say you can see there how there's particular, you know, there's about 2 to 3 parts to each of those. You know, some areas colleagues or applicants might do very well in, and some may not. So, for example, if you have encouraged colleagues to take the digital badge, but you may not have done the facilitation of the digital badge, that doesn't matter. We would take that all into account in terms of the review process.
Perfect, that's great, Daniel. So another few questions here. We have, if an individual is leading a collaborative UDL project, can that be categorized under the collaborative application?
Yes, I would think so. Again, the collaborative award is, we are really exploring to see what is out there. you would still need to have it on behalf of an institution, and you would still need a letter of endorsement from senior management. That's slightly vague, but I would think so, yes. And if you to that panelist, if they wanted to email me separately and we could talk through it, I'm happy to do that.
Perfect. And just another one here, if the data is for an initiative evaluation and is anonymized only as opposed to research purposes, I'm assuming that it does not necessarily require ethics approval.
I would assume that as well, yes. I hope that answers your question, Maureen. I would think so, yes. Did anybody have any questions on the particular rubrics at all? Or is everybody good with that? Okay, that's great. As I say, if and Jess put my email there in the chat, if there were specific questions you had to your own application and to your own context, please do reach out. Very happy to chat over Zoom and talk you through it. I do, you know, we would encourage people as many applications as possible, and as I say, even if you feel there's one category you may not do particularly well in, or a criteria you may not do well in, but you might score well in the others, I would encourage you to apply. So don't be put off, and I think it'll be a really good exercise for individuals and organizations to do, just to see where they are at, how they can, you know, and begin to put an implementation plan together and see what next steps they need to do. And I had one more slide as well, which I'm just going to share with you quickly. And that is we've got the Irish UGL community meets regularly on Twitter to discuss UGL in their context in the UGL chat IE tonight, and so Ahead Ireland will be on Twitter at 9 hosting this particular session tonight. So join in with hashtag UGL chat IE, and hopefully we'll get some conversations going. So with that, I won't keep anybody any longer, and hopefully see some of your applications begin to come in, and we can any emails, as I say, or any queries, do let me know.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Daniel. So we'll draw to a close. And as Daniel said, this session is recorded. It'll be shared by email in the coming days once it's been appropriately captioned. Thanks for joining us all. And again, if there's any kind of further questions for Daniel as you're working through your applications, his email address is on the webpage. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.